Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I think this will go out on the 17th of May, which is still rainy in Manchester. We've got the rain back. Now the 17th of May makes it exactly 3 months that I've been doing this channel in this particular way, talking about books and coming on every single day, sometimes I think even twice a day, to talk to you for about 20 minutes at a time, which is quite a lot of talking and quite a lot of listening. So I want to say thanks, first of all, to everyone who has been here. Look, my t-shirt today is Be More Panda. Yeah, thank you for watching, and especially thank you to those who make it all the way through these videos. I have noticed on the comments, and I've had lots of comments, and I've loved the comments. One of the best things about doing this is the interactions from people who clearly listen to the whole thing and take issue with bits of it, or discuss certain things that I've said, or remember things from their own lives or their own reading. It's lovely to have triggered memories of books and moments that people have enjoyed, and also send people off to go and look for books that I've recommended, especially when they're my own. I do hope people have bought and enjoyed lots of books as a result of the last 3 months. I was going to start slowing down and doing maybe every other day or just a couple of times a week. I did say that about a month ago, and I haven't. I've kept doing it every day. I just like having something to talk to in the corner of the room. I think that leaves me to talk uninterruptedly. That's the joke around here, that this is the place I go in order to just chat away to myself, with no danger of anybody interrupting, which is awful because I do listen. I love listening to people. It's my favourite thing. But here, I get to say all the words. What else? Yeah, I'd like to say thank you to everybody who's watched these. I can't believe that it's, I don't know, my subscriptions are like 1.4 thousand or something ridiculous. They go up, and it's nice that people are responding. I think what I'd like to do is to ask for questions. Do you have any questions that I might answer, that I might sift through? Put them in the comments below if you have questions, and I'll try and get through them in a video quite soon. Anything within reason I'll answer about reading, books, my life, my career, my books, stuff, anything you can think of, things I've said. Questions, that's good. Base a whole video around viewers' questions. I'd also like to know which videos you've enjoyed the most or want to see more of, if you can even differentiate between all of this chat. The ones where I look at books that I've read or go through bookshelves, or the ones where I talk about things I want to read, or the ones where I talk about my books or episodes from my life. I guess a lot of these videos are blend all those things together, and those are the ones I enjoyed doing the most. Like today, I've sat down with no particular plan. I've sat down with a cup of tea, having written my words for the day. 2,000 words this morning, which was amazing to do, even though I barely slept because the cat kept me awake, being naughty and shouting and asking for food. I woke up feeling very tired, but still managed to write, which is amazing. And 2,000 words later, we have lunch and I sit down to talk with a cup of tea. And this afternoon, I intend to read. But yes, no plan in terms of what I'm saying now. Lots of things flit through my head that I might talk about. I was thinking about talking about this business. Channel 4 News did a thing about working class people in the arts, and they focused on theatre and TV. They've done it before, and they talk about actors wanting to break through into the industry and how hard it is in an industry run by upper middle class people with upper middle class expectations. I think it's even harder in publishing and writing, actually. There are always working class actors on screen because so many popular narratives require them. Books are worse, and coming from the northeast and coming from a council estate and coming from a comp and a modern university, I was quite different to the people who I encountered when I moved into the world of publishing and writing and books and book festivals and all that stuff. in the 90s when I was in my 20s. I've had 30 years of this whole industry now, and I've got a lot to say about it, really. So I was vaguely thinking of moving into talking about some of that. You don't want to sound like you're complaining all the time, but there is quite a lot to complain about. There are a lot of people who are snooty, but also people who are snooty without even knowing they're being snooty, who are so unaware of their own privilege, who move into these positions of power within things like publishing and accept that as their right. Well, when I, first started publishing stories and books and going to London and meeting people, I was very aware that this wasn't a world that was particularly welcoming to me, that I wasn't meant to be in. It wasn't made for the likes of me. And when you read about people in the past, like D.H. Lawrence, he was treated absolutely the same by the, snooty buggers down south. Nothing's changed. At least I didn't find that it had. I always think about this particular moment on Facebook. And this was an actor and a comedian who comes from a working class background, a Scottish background. And he was saying similar stuff on Facebook about the opportunities that he'd not encountered, that others from fancier backgrounds, from more middle class backgrounds, more English backgrounds, as he would see it, were being offered when they didn't have his talent. And he said this in public on Facebook. And a friend of his who is a very middle class, very established actress, slightly older than him, came in amongst the people who were giving their commiserations to him and said, and wagged her finger at him in public and said, "Oh, but what you mustn't do is start to sound chippy, like you've got a chip on your shoulder." And he leapt back, in horror. "Oh, but I haven't, I'm so grateful." All those things that people say when they're told that they're acting as if they've got a chip on their shoulder. I thought about this a long time because it was a situation I've shared. I've been in that one, and you feel abashed for moaning and complaining about the lack of opportunities, about people not realizing how hard it is to come from, say, where I came from, and then be amongst people who have no idea what you had to get through to be doing what you're doing, to be publishing, to be sitting on a panel with them at a festival, to be teaching, all those things, the things you have to overcome. Anyway, I did think, it doesn't do to be told by somebody who's had all the breaks, don't be chippy. And I did think, if anybody ever says that to me, if they ever say, "Oh, don't be so chippy," I would say, I'll stop being chippy, when the middle class people I know stop being so smug. It would be a tart rejoinder, because there is a lot of smugness about in the world of writing and the arts, a lot of loveliness, where everybody's lovely. And if you're not lovely, you don't fit in. And sometimes when your face falls and you say the wrong thing and you feel stung by the kind of invisible rebukes that you can get in those kinds of situations when you're not acting correctly because you don't know what the rules are, because they're very middle class rules, the codes of good behavior, of saying one thing while meaning another. If you don't understand that, you can seem out of sorts and cross. And that can look, as they say, chippy. But it's not fair. These are very particular codes of middle class behavior, and it makes things into a closed shop. It isn't transparent at all. I remember going to a festival that was meant to encourage and celebrate creative writing by working class people in the north a few years ago, and I went and I was there as a creative writing tutor. I was there to talk about writing journals and the practice of journal writing, and trying to kind of explain my rules for writing for yourself. And I did a workshop on that. I did 2 workshops on that in the middle of this conference. And there was lots of papers, there were readings, And there were professionals from the industry there to meet with people, and they'd been sent work by people who'd applied and gone through a process by which their work was picked and shown to these editors and agents. And I remember sitting in the green room at the top of this building where the whole one-day conference was being held, and I sat and had a cup of tea, waiting to go and do my turn, and here were all the editors and agents who were supposed to be sympathetic to the project, to the idea of encouraging people from diverse working class backgrounds. And they sat, and I just heard the same old middle class chatter. They talked about how they hadn't read any of the work they'd been sent. They were going to read it on the train, but it was they hadn't had long enough, or they just hadn't done it, and they were going to mug it. They were going to fake it. They were going to wing it. And I was appalled, really. I mean, you meet people who wing it all the time, and if they can talk the right talk, they get away with it. I've seen some surprising people winging it and getting away with stuff and not doing the work. The other thing that appalled me was they talked about coming north, and as if it was going into a different country, leaving London, and here they were, doing good work in the provinces, somebody said, one of these editors or agents or whoever they were. They were quite young, but quite posh. In the provinces. They were in a city, in the middle of a city, by it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It just, again, I sat there feeling a bit stung, really, that we find ourselves at the mercy of people who aren't very good at what they do, but they can fake the kind of required bullishness and competence to get along. And I've seen a lot of that in the worlds I've moved in, not just in publishing or whatever. I've seen it in academia as well, which is, of course, wall-to-wall bullshit and people faking it and putting on airs. People who put on airs are the ones that piss me off, who think they're something, because, you know, I've been made to feel as if I'm nothing at almost everything I've ever turned up at. The first literary party I ever went to was for one of the new writing books published by the British Council. And I went in full of hope and joy because they'd picked a story. Dr. Harriet Harvey Wood was the kind of overall person in charge from the British Council, and she was marvellous, all very gung-ho, very, very supportive, who would make me get up and read in front of people at things like King's Lynn Town Hall, and she'd make me read out the mucky bits of my story that I published that I hadn't intended to read aloud. So she was a great force for the good. And I remember going to one do in Islington Waterstones and being a bit overawed by the people I was meeting and bumping into. And I remember coming in with, it was 95, so I had, you know, ripped Levi's on, of course, ripped at the knees, and walking in. And it was that woman who began Virago, whose name I've forgotten again. And everybody revered her, but she was a bit fierce. But I knew she was really good friends with Angela Carter and with Lorna Sage. And I knew she'd been a big supporter of various people whose work I really liked. And I remember saying hello, and she looked me up and down, and she said, "Your clothes look like something one would give to the poor." That was my welcome to literary London, which has always stuck with me. She was stood there with Philip Hensher, the novelist, who kind of sneered politely as well. And Carmen Khalil, of course, that was her name, the Virago woman. "Yeah, you look like you're dressed in things one would give away to the poor." And I said, "Carmen, I am the poor." And the poor had been asked to come to this party because the poor had written a fucking good story, to be honest, that I don't suppose she ever read, that was in that particular book. Anyway, it doesn't do to dwell on these things, although I do. I do. They stick in your head because, you know, you turn up hoping that things are going to be nice. And And you find these, I guess nowadays they call them microaggressions, little jabs, little things that people say just to knock you back because you're getting too full of yourself or you don't fit. And so I do have a lot of sympathy when I watch that thing about, people in the arts and how these things are dominated by a certain kind of person. And that's no good for any of the arts, for any industry, is it? To have the same old people with the same old codes of conduct, the same old manners, the same in-jokes. That can't be good for anything. Diversity is good, as we know. But it has to be diverse. It has to be properly diverse. And you find that the people who are telling you, wagging their finger at you about diversity from positions of powers are still the same old white people, white middle class people. So where they, when they say they've changed all these things and made things different, it's the same old middle class people telling you just how things should be. In some ways, nothing's changed. It's all a bit finger waggy these days. I promise I won't wag my finger and tell people how things ought to be. I've just been working on a Doctor Who story. It's an adaptation of something in which the villain used to be a revolutionary who changed the world to make everything marvellous, to make a paradise in his world. And you'll see this when it comes out. And as time goes by, he becomes corrupted by his ideals. As the Doctor says, like all revolutionaries eventually are, if they stay in power, if they feel they are always right, if they are never challenged, that's how revolutions eventually become reactionary. And to feel that you're always in the right is a very bad place to be, I think. So maybe, well, that's the smugness thing, isn't it? If you feel smug, you're probably doing it wrong. You should be challenged, you should be thinking all the time and having to reinvent yourself. Some of us have no choice about doing that. We simply do have to keep moving and reinventing ourselves because we're never made to feel comfortable enough in what we do. The people who are told all the time, you're brilliant, you're a genius, you're doing everything correct, carry on doing that, will eventually kind of come a cropper, I think, because it's like the Queen, isn't it? The Queen always thought the world smelled of fresh paint. I love that old joke because she'd go around with a handbag looking at the lovely world, meeting people, and just round the corner, here's a fella painting the walls. Everything smells of fresh paint to the Queen. And of course, the world doesn't smell of fresh paint. It rarely does. Wow, I'm rambling on today. That's just what I think about smugness and about chippiness, those two horrid words, those two horrid states. Hello, Socks. Socks has just woken up and he's being plaintive in his cries. What are you after? I will stop there. Anyway, this is 3 months into my YouTube vlogging. There's an awful word, vlogging. That sounds science fiction-y. Let me know what you want me to talk about and how, or whether I should just carry on doing the way I'm doing it. And do send me questions. I like the idea of answering some questions. A bit like doing a kind of mini festival appearance when you're on the stage. I love taking questions. It makes me laugh. Socks has left in disgust to go and open his own packet of cat food, I think. I will say goodbye, and I will see you again soon in the next episode, and I promise I will have a pile of books next time to talk about. Okay, goodbye.